Scottish folk and fairy tales. Nuckelavlee. Nuckelavlee was a monster of unmixed malignity, never willingly resting from doing evil to mankind. He was a spirit in flesh. His home was the sea, and whatever means of transit were in that element, when he moved on to land, he rode a horse as terrible in aspect as himself. Some thought that rider and horse were really one, and that this was the shape of the monster. Nuckelavlee's head was like a man's, only 10 times larger, with his mouth projected like that of a pig and was enormously wide. He was not There was not a hair of on this monster's body, and for pretty good reason was that he had no skin. If crops were blighted by sea gust or mildew, if livestock fell over high rocks that skirt the shores, or an epidemic raged among men, or that among the lower animals, Nuckelavee was the cause of all that. His breath was venom, falling like blight on vegetable, and with deadly disease on animal life. He was also blamed for long continued droughts. For some unknown reason, he had a serious objection to fresh water, and was never known to visit the land during rain. I knew an old man who was credited with once encountering Nuckelavee and with having a narrow escape from the monster's clutches. This man was very reticent on the subject. However, after much higgling and persuasion, the following narrative was extracted. Tammas, like his namesake Tam O'Shanter, was out late one night. It was, though moonless, a fine starlit night. Tammas' road lay close to the seashore, and he entered a part of the road that was hemmed on one side by the sea and the other side by a deep freshwater loch. He saw some huge object in front of and moving toward him. What should he do? He was sure it was no earthly thing, but that was steadily coming toward him. He could not go to either side, and to turn his back on the evil thing he'd heard would be the most dangerous position of all. So Tammy said to himself, "The Lord be about me and take care of me, as I am out on no evil intent this night." Tammy was regarded as rough and foolhardy. Anyhow, he was determined to make the best of two evils and face the foe, and so walked resolutely and yet slowly forward. He soon discovered to his horror that the gruesome creature approaching him was none other than the dreaded Nuckelavee. The lower part of this terrible monster, as seen by Tammy, was like a great horse with flappers like fins about his legs, and with a mouth as wide as a whale, and from hence came breath like steam of that of a brewing kettle. He had but one eye, and that was red as fire, and on him sat, or rather grew from his back, a huge man with no legs and arms that reached nearly to the ground. His head was as big as a clew of Simmons, or a clew of straw ropes, generally about 3 feet in diameter. And this huge head kept rolling from one shoulder to the other, as if meant to tumble off. But what to Tammy appeared the most horrible of all was that the monster was skinless. This was utter want of skin, adding to the terrific appearance of the creature's naked body, the whole surface of it showing only like raw red flesh, and in which he saw blood, black as tar, running through yellow veins, and great white sinews, thick as horse tethers, twisting and stretching and contracting as the monster moved. Tammy went on slowly in mortar terror, his hair on end, a cold sensation like film of ice between his scalp and his skull, and cold sweat bursting from every pore. But he knew it was useless to flee, and he said if he had to die, he would rather see what killed him than die with his back to the foe. In all his terror, Tammy remembered what he had heard of Nuckelavlee's dislike for fresh water, and therefore he took that side of the road which was nearest the loch. The awful moment came when the lower part of the head of the monster got abreast of Tammy. The mouth of the monster yawned like a bottomless pit, and Tammy found its hot breath like fire on his face. The long arms were stretched out to seize the unhappy man. To avoid, if possible, the monster's clutch, Tammy swerved as near as he could to the loch. In doing so, and one of his feet went into the loch, splashing up some water on the foreleg of the monster, whereat the horse gave a snort like thunder and shied over to the other side of the road, and Tammy felt the wind of Nuckelavlee's clutches as he narrowly escaped the monster's grip. Tammy saw his opportunity and ran with all his might, and sore need had he to run, for Nuckelavlee had turned and was galloping after him, and bellowing with such a sound like roaring of the sea. In front of Tammy lay a rivulet through which the surplus water of a loch found its way into the sea, and Tammy knew if he could only cross this running water, he was to be safe, so he strained every nerve. As he reached the near bank, another clutch was made at him by the long arms. Tammy made a desperate swing and reached the other side, leaving his bonnet in the monster's clutches. Nuckelavee gave a wild, unearthly yell of disappointed rage as Tammy fell senseless on the safe side of the water.